You think you are doing the work. You journal. You vent. You have long talks about childhood, trauma, attachment, inner child, shadow work. You can explain why you are anxious, why you shut down, why you chase or avoid love. You sound self-aware. You sound intelligent. But here is the problem. All of that can still be a highly polished form of avoidance. It is very easy to spend years talking around the real center of your life without ever touching it. The nervous system is not stupid. It will let you cry, analyze, confess, and perform healing, as long as you do not touch the file that actually runs the show. Chapter 1. You are living around a missing page. There is a black file in you, not a folder on your computer, but a sealed script inside your body. It was written during a moment or a short phase where something became too intense, too overwhelming, too unsafe for the child version of you to process. In that moment, your nervous system made a deal. It would bury the scene, fog the details, and block direct access to the full memory. In exchange, it would keep the conclusions. It would keep the rule you learned, something like, I am too much. My needs hurt people. Love leaves. Closeness is dangerous. I deserve pain. My feelings cause chaos. That conclusion became non-negotiable. Defense mechanisms, the kind George Vaillant studied, grew around it like armor. Repression, where you push awareness out of consciousness. Dissociation, where you float away from your own body. Rationalization, where you turn pain into clever stories. All of that to protect a few seconds of raw learning. So you end up with an illusion. You feel self-aware because you can describe your life story. You can list your traumas and patterns. You can quote psychology terms. But notice this. There are memories that feel strangely foggy. There are years that feel blurred. There are scenes you recall but with no emotion, like looking at a photograph of somebody else. Then there are reactions in the present that are way too strong for what is actually happening. Panic over a late text. Shame that feels lethal over a small mistake. Numbness when someone is kind. That split between strong reaction and vague memory is the sign that you are orbiting the black file, not opening it. Your story is detailed, but it is built around a missing page. The hard truth is this: most people will spend their entire life editing that story. They will switch therapists. They will change partners. They will swap coping methods from alcohol to meditation, from rage to spiritual bypass. The script will look different on the surface, but the same law inside the black file will keep running. It will quietly decide who feels attractive to you, what kind of treatment you accept, how much money you let yourself earn, how much joy you allow before you sabotage. That missing page explains why every path bends the same way in the end. And most healing stays neat and comfortable because it never asks you to actually read it. This script is not about soothing you. It is not about building a nicer story around the pain. It is about walking straight toward the thing your nervous system marked as do not touch. If you keep watching, you are not doing light self-help. You are choosing to look at the classified document that your defenses have been hiding your entire life. There is a reason most people never do this. There is also a reason the few who do stop repeating the same fate. If you want a controlled way to approach that missing page without snapping yourself in half, you keep going. If you are already tired just hearing this, your black file is closer than you think. Chapter 2. The Black File. How your nervous system created a classified document. The black file is not magic. It is not mystical. It is a very aggressive form of learning. Aaron Beck and Jeffrey Young, in their work on schemas, describe how the mind builds core patterns out of repeated emotional experiences. A schema is a deep rule about yourself, about other people, or about the world. It sounds like, I am unlovable, I am powerless, people will abandon me, people hurt me when I trust them, my needs are too much, my feelings are dangerous, the world is unsafe. These are not just thoughts, they are emotional laws. They come with a weight in the body, a certain taste of fear, shame, anger, or emptiness. They form when you are young and there is no backup system. You cannot move out. You cannot pick new parents. The only way to stay alive is to make sense of what is happening and adjust to it. So imagine a child who reaches out for comfort and meets coldness, irritation, or mockery over and over. Bowlby and Ainsworth showed how those early attachment patterns do not just hurt in the moment. They write rules. The child does not think, "My parent is emotionally immature." The child thinks, "My need for comfort causes rejection. I am the problem. If I show need, I lose love." Over time, that conclusion becomes a schema, a tight fusion of feeling and meaning. Jeffrey Young calls these early maladaptive schemas. You do not choose them. They form under pressure. They are the nervous system trying to predict what will happen and how to prevent pain. The black file is what happens when this process gets welded to an overwhelming event. Trauma research from Bessel van der Kolk and Peter Levine shows that when something is too much for the system, the brain does not save it as a clean story. It shatters it. The fragments go into the body, the racing heart, the frozen muscles, the knot in the stomach, the blank stare. The smells, sounds, and tiny details get stored in sensory form. The nervous system has a simple priority: survive now, make sense later. The problem is that later never comes for that scene. The story never fully forms. The body keeps the sensations, the mind keeps the conclusion, but the narrative that links them is sequestered. That is how a file gets tagged as "do not touch." From the brain's point of view, this makes sense. If you fully remember the original scene, with adult awareness, you might question it. You might see that you were not unlovable, just neglected. You might see that your rage was sane, your sadness valid, your confusion normal. That would threaten the old survival strategy. The child did not have the power to challenge the environment. So instead, the brain walls off the moment and enforces the rule. It is like an internal law book that says, to stay alive, you must never again need too much, feel too big, trust too deeply, relax too fully. The file holds the first time that law was burned into your nervous system, but your awareness is only allowed to see the behavior that grew from it. Neuroscience adds something important here. Memory is not a bookshelf of fixed recordings. It is a pattern system. Bruce Ecker and Kareem Nader, building on work in memory reconsolidation, show that emotional memories are living networks. Each time you recall them, they can be changed, but only if the system realizes the old learning is wrong. Traumatic memories are special because they resist this update. They sit in the brain as locked schemas with a strong emotional charge. They get activated whenever a current situation remotely resembles the old danger. Your partner turns away, your chest clamps, and the law fires. I am being abandoned. Even if they are just checking their phone, in that moment you are not reacting to the present. You are reacting to the black file being slightly bumped. This is why talk alone has such a hard time touching it. Traumatic memory is often state-dependent and non-verbal. That means you need to be in a similar emotional and bodily state as the original moment for the memory network to even be active. When you sit in a calm office, explaining your history, you are using the thinking part of your brain. You are high in language, low in raw sensation. You are giving commentary while the real file stays offline. Van der Kolk's work shows that people can talk about their trauma for years without their body changing its automatic reactions. Insight increases, symptoms bend a little, but the core pattern does not update. Because the feeling plus meaning cluster that runs your life is not touched by stories, it lives below them. The black file is not just a bad memory. It is an entire pattern of feeling and meaning that once kept you alive under conditions you could not control. From the system's view, that file is sacred. It worked. You survived. That is why it resists editing. The cost of obeying it might be loneliness, self-hatred, or smallness, but the nervous system sees that as better than death. It only understands what almost killed you back then, not what slowly kills you now. So every time a current event resembles the old danger even slightly, it sends the same orders: shut down, please, rage, run, numb, attach harder, do anything to keep the rule in place. Standard therapy often lets you circle around this architecture. You get interpretations. Your father was avoidant. Your mother was anxious. Your ex was narcissistic. You have abandonment issues. These can be useful as maps, but they are still secondhand. You do not feel the black file itself. You feel its side effects. You talk from the neck up, while your chest still grounds itself in the old law. The insight feels real, but it does not take away the panic when a text is left on read. It does not stop the nausea when someone looks at you with genuine care. Because those reactions are not driven by story, they are driven by a somatic script. The danger here is subtle. You can build a very detailed city map of your life. Trauma timelines, genograms, attachment styles, personality labels. You can analyze every street, every route, every detour. But if you never enter the basement where the law was written, the city still runs on that hidden rule. The black file sits there, like a classified document that says, this is who you are, this is what you deserve, this is how safe you are allowed to be. Every job, every partner, every fight or silence bends to fit that script. Until you touch that file directly, every new insight is just an improved description of a prison. The system stays in charge. You mistake analysis for freedom. This is the part most people never hear. Your nervous system is not loyal to the truth. It is loyal to what kept you alive. That is why your black file is still in charge, decades after the original threat is gone. It does not care that you are an adult now. It does not care that you have money, or distance, or options. It cares that once, when you had none of that, a certain feeling plus meaning combination meant survival. That pattern became a locked document in your system. Unless you access it in the right state and expose it to information that proves it false, it will keep running your life as if you are still that child. That is the architecture you are up against. Until you learn how to reach that file, everything you call growth will be limited by it. You will become a better version of your old self, not a different self, more functional, more educated, more emotionally literate, but still rotating around the same hidden law. The rest of this script is about how to stop orbiting and actually open the file, not to feel better instantly, to see what has been using you, and then decide if you still want to obey. Chapter 3. The 7-Step Black File Protocol. The part they hid behind ethics. If you want the black file, you cannot go at it with vague reflection. You need a protocol, not because of drama, but because the mind is slippery. It protects itself. This is the method that many systems avoid teaching in full because, used recklessly, it can crack a fragile identity faster than it can rebuild it. Used with control, it lets you see the real law underneath a lifelong pattern. Take this slowly, like you are handling something volatile. First, you track a repeating pattern. Not every insecurity, not every random bad day. Choose one theme that keeps coming back no matter what you do. Being left, being criticized, being cheated on, being ignored, being used, failing at the last moment, going numb in intimacy, exploding with anger and then drowning in shame. Freud called this repetition compulsion, the way people unconsciously recreate early emotional situations over and over. Modern studies back it up. People with certain histories keep picking partners, bosses, even friends who fit the same emotional profile. It looks like bad luck. It is actually loyalty to an old learning. Your first job is to point at one loop in your own life and say, this, right here, keeps happening. Second, you trace it to the body, not the story. This is where most people break the process. They rush into explanation. They start talking about their ex, their mother, their trauma. Stop. Stories can wait. When that pattern shows up, ask, where does this live in my body? Not in poetic terms, in concrete terms. Is it a burning in the chest, a tight throat, a sinking stomach, a pressure behind the eyes, a numb fog in the limbs? Van der Kolk's work on interoception, your sense of internal body states, shows that trauma is stored exactly there. The black file is tied to a particular somatic signature. Every time the law gets activated, that signature appears. Your nervous system is saying, this is that thing again. So you sit with the raw sensations. You label them like data. Heavy chest, cold hands, shaky jaw. No explanation yet. Third, you find the oldest version of that feeling. This is where state-dependent memory starts to do the work. The system stores things so that when you re-enter a similar emotional and bodily state, connected memories become easier to reach. So once you have the current bodily state clearly marked, you ask, when have I felt this exact combination before? Not kind of similar. Exact. The same shame plus tight throat. The same fear plus frozen legs. Let your mind wander back without forcing it. You are not trying to recall every bad thing that happened. You are scanning for the earliest memory that fits this emotional somatic pattern. It might show up as a quick flash, sitting at a table, standing in a doorway, hearing voices in the next room, being in a car. Do not worry if it seems small or random. The body signature is the key, not how dramatic the scene looks at first. Fourth, you force the first scene to surface. This sounds violent, but it is simply focused persistence. Once you are in the bodily state, you close your eyes and ask with intensity, what is the earliest moment in my life that had this exact feeling? Then you wait. You do not push away what comes because it seems trivial. People in imagery rescripting research often find that the real target memory is not the event they thought was the worst. It is the moment their system first made the rule. Sometimes it is not the beating, but the silence after. Not the breakup, but the expression on a caregiver's face. You keep your attention locked on the body sensations and let any scene rise. If nothing comes, you stay with the feeling and repeat the question in a calm but relentless way. The nervous system will eventually pull a scene from the archive. That is how the network works. Fifth, you strip narrative and isolate data. Once a scene appears, the adult mind will rush in to comment. It will explain, justify, minimize, judge the child or the parent. That is more defense. For now, you suspend it. You observe the scene like an investigator. You log 3 things only. What was happening in plain terms? Where were you? Who was there? What were they doing? What were you feeling in your body and emotions right then as that child? Not after you had time to think, but in the moment. And most important, what conclusion did that child draw about themselves, about other people, and about the world? Children make fast, global decisions. They do not think, my caregiver is stressed. They think, my needs push people away. I am bad. People do not care. The world is not safe. That conclusion is the schema forming right in front of you. Sixth, you extract the core belief. Now you compress that child conclusion into a single sentence law. Not a long story. A law. If I need, I get punished. If I show emotion, I lose love. If I relax, something bad happens. If I succeed, I get attacked. If I am myself, I am rejected. Cognitive therapy has shown for decades that automatic thoughts sit on top of deep assumptions like this. The black file is basically that assumption, burned into your nervous system with a specific emotional charge. You write that sentence down verbatim. You do not soften it. You do not turn it into a positive affirmation. You state the raw law that was created in that scene. It will sound absolute and unfair. That is the point. Children do not make nuanced laws. They make survival rules. Seventh, you track your life as obedience or rebellion to that law. This is where the protocol shows you its teeth. You take that one sentence and you scan through your life. Relationship choices, friend groups, jobs, self-sabotage, addictions, even your so-called strengths. You ask, how has this been me obeying this law or rebelling against it in a way that still treats it as true? For example, if the law is, if I show need, I get punished. Obedience looks like never asking for help, always being the strong one, staying silent when hurt. Rebellion looks like dramatic displays of need, panic attacks, crises that force people to care, but under all of it is the expectation of punishment or withdrawal. Either way, the law is still the center. Identity research shows that people seek self-verification. They keep arranging life to confirm what they already believe about themselves. Now you see in real time how that black file has been directing almost everything. At this point, you will feel something. Maybe anger at the original scene, or at yourself, or at everyone. Maybe sadness, like the air has gone out of your story. Maybe relief, because for the first time your life looks like a single clear pattern instead of chaos. This is where a harsh warning is needed. Do not try to open every black file in your system at once. Most people have a small number of core files, not just one. If you force multiple early scenes and laws to the surface in a short time, you risk blowing out your stability. Clinical work on deep trauma shows that when too many core beliefs are deconstructed at once, people can become dissociated, depressed, or suicidal. This is not a game for a long weekend. There is a reason methods that cut this fast are usually used by highly trained clinicians in controlled settings. The protocol you just saw is what many institutions keep blurry on purpose. They will talk about insight, schemas, childhood, but not give a clean, mechanical way to drag the original file into light. Because once you see the exact law and how it has been running your life, you cannot go back to innocent suffering. You start to become dangerous to the story that has been using you. That is powerful. It is also destabilizing if you treat it like a self-help challenge instead of a serious psychological operation. Respect the tool. It is not here to comfort you. It is here to make the lie visible. Chapter 4. Why they buried this behind ethics and client safety. If this protocol is so effective at exposing the black file, why is it not standard in every therapy room, every coaching program, every mental health app? The answer is not a simple conspiracy. It is about incentives, fear, and control. Most therapy models are built for gradual change. Psychodynamic therapy, classic talk therapy, works through years of association and interpretation. Cognitive behavioral therapy targets thoughts and behaviors over structured sessions. Supportive therapy focuses on coping skills and emotional support. Meta-analyses show that these methods help people, but the changes are often modest and slow, spread across many sessions. This creates a stable system. Clients return weekly. Symptoms improve just enough to stay functional. The clinic or therapist has predictable, billable work. There is no rush to core identity rupture. The black file stays untouched, and nobody gets sued for triggering a breakdown. Rapid protocols that aim straight at core emotional learning are a different animal. They can create what clinicians call rupture or decompensation if used without care. Research and case reports show that when clients confront core beliefs too fast, especially without support, they can become more anxious, more depressed, even psychotic if there is an underlying vulnerability. Ethics boards and supervisors see these outcomes and react in the most predictable way: clamp down. They stress safety. They stress gradualism. They insist on not pushing clients past their so-called window of tolerance. Some of that is valid. You cannot tear down a person's main survival structure overnight and expect no fallout. But safety language also becomes a shield for institutions. It lets them avoid any method that might bring chaos, complaints, or legal risk, even if that method has strong potential for deep change when used correctly. There is also the issue of identity economies. Whole industries are built on you having a permanent, manageable problem. Self-help brands, coaching businesses, wellness retreats, motivational influencers, all rely on you staying in a certain kind of pain, hurt enough to pay, not hurt enough to collapse. The wounded yet functional persona is profitable. There is even research on secondary gain, where a person's symptoms bring hidden benefits like attention, identity, or protection from responsibility. Illness identity models show how people can start to see themselves mainly through the lens of their diagnosis or trauma. If you use the black file protocol well, a lot of that collapses. The drama loses its center. The story you sell to yourself and others as your brand, the brave survivor, the empath who attracts narcissists, the broken but deep soul, stops feeling like a fixed reality. It starts to look like obedience to an old rule. That makes you less predictable, less loyal to a victim identity, and much harder to market to. Institutions do not like tools that make clients unpredictable. Ethics committees, licensing boards, and insurers are all built around risk control. Memory reconsolidation research, like Ecker's work, shows that when you bring a core emotional memory into an active state and then give it sharply conflicting information, the brain can rewrite it at a deep level. That is powerful neuroplasticity. But from a liability view, it is scary. Techniques that can rapidly reorganize core beliefs look like explosives in the hands of people who are rushed, undertrained, or pressured to produce quick results. So the system responds by burying or diluting them. They are called experimental, too intense, outside the scope of practice. Training in these methods is often limited, expensive, or trapped in specialist circles. The average therapist is taught safer, slower tools that do not risk collapsing a client's identity quickly, even if that means years of circling. Meanwhile, the workplace benefits from your unresolved black file. Corporate cultures thrive on self-doubt and overcompensation. The employee who secretly believes I am only valuable if I never rest will push past burnout. The manager who believes conflict means rejection will avoid hard conversations, keeping the surface calm. The person who believes I do not deserve more money will under-ask in salary talks. These are not random flaws. They are schema-driven behaviors that keep hierarchies stable. A population that starts questioning the root of those beliefs becomes less compliant, less easy to intimidate, less easy to guilt-trip with performance reviews or culture slogans. So knowledge that could help people rewrite those rules will never be promoted by systems that profit from obedience. You also have the mental health economy itself. Chronic, managed suffering is a recurring revenue model. If you teach people how to target and update black files in a focused way, some of them will stop needing weekly care as soon. That threatens income streams. There are, of course, many therapists who genuinely want clients to outgrow them. But at the structural level, long-term low-intensity treatment is safer and more profitable than short-term high-intensity methods that could either transform or destabilize. So the narrative becomes, go slow, take years, do not rush, be careful of anything that promises deep shifts. On the surface, that sounds wise. Underneath, it also keeps the door to the prison sealed. This does not mean all caution is fake. There are real dangers. Confronting the black file too aggressively can re-traumatize, especially without grounding or support. But notice how the same word, ethics, is used to cover both real concern and institutional self-protection. Any technique that threatens standard models gets labeled as risky. Clients are rarely told that there are methods capable of hitting the core schema. They are given diluted versions. A little inner child work, a little somatic exercise, a little cognitive challenging. Enough to move things, not enough to rewrite the law. So you get sold polished tools for decorating your cell. Mindfulness to accept your triggers, journaling to express your pain, affirmations to talk over your deeper belief, medication to mute the volume, coaching to optimize performance inside the same rules. You are kept busy, supported, and slightly improved. But nobody is supposed to hand you a clear protocol to go into the basement and read the document that actually runs you. Not because it does not exist, because if too many people started using it, a lot of long-term dependencies would crumble. The final twist is brutal. While institutions protect themselves from your potential breakdown, you pay the cost in time. Years, decades of circling the same patterns with new language. By the time most people realize they have been orbiting a black file, half their life is gone. That is what this knowledge threatens. Not just individual comfort, but the predictability of whole systems. That is why it stays hidden behind academic terms, paywalled trainings, and warnings about safety. You were never meant to hold the tools that could let you leave your assigned role. Now you do. Chapter 5. Life after opening the black file. The collapse and the rebuild. Opening the black file does not make you feel instantly wise or serene. At first, it feels like losing your main story. For years, you told yourself a version of who you are. The anxious one, the strong caretaker, the distant lone wolf, the passionate but chaotic partner. That narrative felt like identity. When you see the black file behind it, cognitive dissonance hits hard. Festinger described how the mind reacts when reality clashes with a cherished belief. You realize that what you called choice was often automatic obedience to an old rule. The college you chose, the city you moved to, the people you chased or avoided, even the times you sabotaged good things, all line up under that law. It can feel sickening. The self you defended for years starts to look like a defense project, not a free being. The first shift is shock, not theatrical shock. A quiet, heavy pause. You might find yourself just sitting on the floor, staring, as your brain runs through memories with a new filter. That fight, that breakup, that job you left. They stop being isolated incidents and become episodes in a longer script. The feeling is almost mechanical. Of course I did that, given the law I believed. There is grief in that logic. Narrative identity research, like Dan McAdams' work, shows that people need a story that makes sense. When that story changes too fast, you feel unmoored. The old villain roles and hero roles in your life stop holding, You see how you helped write scenes you once thought were done to you. Then comes anger. At them, at yourself, at the whole setup. Anger at caregivers who were too wrapped in their own pain to notice what rule they were burning into you. Anger at partners who used your schema for their gain. Anger at therapists or coaches who danced around your pain for years without handing you the real tools. Some of that anger is raw and justified. It is also dangerous if you stay in it. Because if you turn the black file into just another reason to blame, you avoid the next step, owning how you kept the rule alive long after the original threat was gone. That is not about fault. It is about power. The third phase is grief. Real, slow, body-level grief. You are not just sad about what happened. You are sad about what could have happened if the law had been different. Relationships that might have worked if you were not unconsciously testing your belief. Risks you never took because the file said you would be punished. Joy you cut off early because your system predicted loss. This is the mourning of an unlived life. Research on post-traumatic growth shows that people who actually process trauma do not just reframe it. They actively grieve the alternate versions of themselves they never got to be. If you skip this, you are not free. You are just numb. After grief comes disorientation. In predictive processing models, the brain constantly uses beliefs to forecast what will happen next. When a core belief about yourself or others dissolves, those predictions go haywire. Reality can feel slightly unreal, like you are watching your life instead of living it. Things that used to trigger you now feel muted, and that can be unsettling. You might have moments of thinking, if I am not the person who always gets abandoned or always fixes others, who am I? Social roles may not fit. Old friends might feel like strangers. Your nervous system lost its main script for what is safe and what is dangerous. It has to rebuild from scratch, and that rebuilding is clumsy at first. The fifth phase is agency. It does not come with trumpets. It comes quietly, after the nausea and confusion. You start noticing small forks in the road where before there was only one path. You feel the old impulse rise, to apologize when you did nothing wrong, to chase someone pulling away, to work late to earn worth. But now you can see it as the law firing. A prediction, not a fact. Memory reconsolidation research shows that when a core belief has been truly contradicted by new experience, the emotional charge around it drops. It becomes easier to act against it. The first few times it feels wrong, almost physically. Saying no, saying I need, saying I do not accept that. But each time you do, you send new data back to the system. The old rule is not absolute. To rebuild without rebranding your wound as identity, there are 3 rules you do not break. First, no pity-based identity. Studies on victim identity show that when people start to define themselves mainly as harmed, they get stuck in rumination and bitterness. The black file can be used as material for this. You tell the story of your early wound so often that it becomes your main personality trait. That might bring sympathy, social validation, and even a sense of specialness. But it also chains you to the wound. You are still orbiting it, just with better language. Second, no wounded but wise self-branding. This is the spiritual version of the same trap. The person who stays close to their suffering because it makes them feel deep, sensitive, or superior to the so-called unawakened. The narrative goes, I have been through so much, that is why I see what others cannot. That can be partly true. Pain can sharpen perception, but if you cling to this identity, you keep your life centered around the black file for significance. You do not allow yourself to become simply ordinary and free, because ordinary feels like nothing. You keep recreating situations that feed the old law just to keep your story alive. Third, no relationships that demand you perform your old schema. Attachment and codependency research show how people unconsciously choose partners who fit their inner working model. If your black file says I am responsible for other people's feelings, you will attract takers, victims, or emotionally unstable people who need constant regulation. If your law says love leaves, you will be drawn to avoidant or unavailable partners. Once you open the file, you start feeling how certain dynamics pressure you to go back into the old role. You will get pushback when you stop. Accusations, guilt trips, silent treatment. The cost of rebuilding is this. Anyone who needs you to stay in your old pattern to feel safe will either adjust or fall away. You cannot keep all your old relationships and have a new self at the same time. The real strength comes when you start living from beliefs you authored on purpose, then putting those beliefs into contact with real life. Memory reconsolidation says a belief changes for good when it is activated and then met with a mismatch. So if your old law was if I show need, I get punished, and your new belief is my needs are valid and can be met, you do not just chant that in your head, you act on it in reality. You state a need to someone trustworthy and stay present long enough to feel what happens. When you are not punished, the system records a violation of the old rule. Repeat that enough, and the emotional weight shifts from the black file to the new pattern. That is how you get durable change, not by thinking different words, but by living different experiences. At first, acting from a self-authored belief feels wrong. There is no old script to hide behind, no familiar shame to retreat into when things get hard. When you do something that breaks the old law, like receiving kindness without collapsing, or walking away from someone who disrespects you, a part of you will panic. It will ask, who am I if I am not the person who stays, fixes, or endures? The honest answer is, you do not know yet. You are in the gap between the collapse of the defense self and the formation of a more real self. That gap is where most people turn back. But if you stay, you start to notice something your nervous system has not felt since the original wound. Space, choice, quiet, not because the world became safe, because the law stopped being your God. Chapter 6. Using the black file without destroying yourself. You need to treat this knowledge like a weapon, not a ritual. A weapon can protect or harm, depending on how it is handled. Unstructured, solo excavation into your black files can be dangerous, especially if your history includes complex trauma, long-term abuse, or unstable mental health. Curiosity without containment turns into self-harm. The goal is not to rip off all covers at once. The goal is to work within your nervous system's range, so you can actually integrate what you see instead of shattering around it. Start with containment. Daniel Siegel's idea of the window of tolerance is simple. There is a zone of arousal, where you can feel and think at the same time. Above it, you are overwhelmed, panicky, or enraged. Below it, you are numb, shut down, or spaced out. Black file work should happen near the top of that window, not beyond it. When you feel your heart racing, your breath shortening, or your mind going blank, that is a signal to slow down. Grounding is not a cute wellness tip here. It is survival. Simple actions. Feel your feet on the floor. Look around and name what you see. Hold something cold. Move your body. These are ways to remind your nervous system that you are in the present, not back in the original scene. Somatic methods like titration. From somatic experiencing, talk about touching pain in small doses instead of all at once. Instead of diving into the worst memory and staying there until you break, you approach, feel a bit of the charge, then back off, then return later. That back and forth lets the system slowly expand what it can handle. If you ignore this and force full exposure to the black file for hours, you risk re-traumatizing. The body relives the event without enough new safety information to update it. You confirm the old law instead of challenging it. There are also people who should not do this alone, at all. If you have active psychosis where you lose touch with reality, if you have severe dissociation where you black out, lose time, or feel like you have multiple separate selves that do not communicate, if you have ongoing suicidal thoughts or a history of attempts, if you are currently in an unsafe environment, living with an abuser or under extreme stress with no exit, if you have no external support, no friend, no community, nobody who can hold you if things get rough. In these cases, trying to crack your core files without professional containment can push you over an edge. Your system is already near its limit. You do not kick at the main support beam in that state. If you choose to seek guidance, be selective. Many therapists and coaches are skilled at talking about stories, but not about bodies or memory networks. You want someone who understands trauma, not just in theory, but in practice. Look for signs. Do they talk about somatic experience, about grounding, about how the nervous system reacts? Are they familiar with ideas from van der Kolk, Levine, or other trauma specialists? Do they know about memory reconsolidation, not as a buzzword but as a process? Do they focus only on changing thoughts, Or do they respect that your body might not follow a thought just because it sounds rational? Do they show any sign of having navigated their own depth? Or do they hide behind bland positivity and generic coping tools? You also need to check their style. Someone who pushes fast catharsis, endless emotional release, or dramatic breakthroughs without planning for integration is a risk. They might be addicted to intensity, not healing. On the other hand, someone who keeps you talking in circles for months without ever touching a concrete scene, body state, or belief is keeping you safe and stuck. The right guide is willing to go toward the black file, but also willing to stop if your system starts to spin out. They are not thrilled by your collapse. They care about your capacity. In the end, the decision is yours. Stay loyal to the edited version of yourself, the one built around the missing page, and life will feel familiar, painful, repetitive, but predictable. That is the comfort of the prison. You know the rules. You know how to suffer in ways that make sense, or you risk opening the file that has been writing you. You accept the side effects, disorientation, grief, the loss of some relationships, the death of a story you have protected for years. There is no guarantee of a happy ending, no promise that life becomes easy. The only real promise is this: you will stop being a passive character in a script your nervous system wrote in fear. You will see the law, and once you see it, you cannot fully believe it the same way again. Most people, even after hearing all of this, will choose the prison. They will say it is not the right time. They will say they are too busy, too tired, too scared. They will go back to polishing their story, upgrading their coping, adding new language to old pain. Their life will remain understandable and small. Your quiet advantage is not that you are braver or better. It is that now, when you feel that familiar pattern tightening around you, a part of you knows, this is not fate, not personality, not who I am. It is a file, and files can be opened.